Also in our money lead, a major warning from 5 former Treasury Secretaries, all Democrats, about Elon Musk and the DOGE team's activities inside the Treasury Department. In a New York Times op-ed, the former secretaries say flat out Musk's team doesn't know what it's doing, and that's creating a serious risk that could mess up the basic government functions, like Social Security payments to everyday Americans who rely on them. They write, quote, "We are alarmed about the risks of arbitrary and capricious political control of federal payments, which would be unlawful and corrosive to our democracy." I want to bring in one of the authors from that opinion piece, former Treasury Secretary under President Clinton, Larry Summers. Mr. Secretary, thanks so much for taking the time. I think one of the questions kind of to start off with is there are reams of GAO reports and IG reports issuing warnings about the controls or lack thereof around the Bureau of Fiscal Service, around these Treasury payments, around the agency process that they go through. For the people who say, why can't the DOGE team look into these payments and try and figure out what's not going to the right place, why are they wrong?
I hold no brief for the current system, and there may well be abuses, and if there are, it's absolutely imperative that those abuses be corrected. But it has to be done in ways that are entirely legal. Just like when you crack down on crime, that's the right thing to do, but it doesn't mean the police get to do anything they want, and it doesn't mean it's okay to convict innocent people. And the concern here is not with reform. The concern here is that people who have no security clearance, no substantial amount of vetting, who are direct political appointees rather than civil servants, are getting access to the computer files that have enormously sensitive information about large numbers of Americans. That's one concern. And the other concern is that they're asserting that they're going to turn off payments, not that are fraudulent, but turn off payments like payments made under USAID that correspond to congressional mandates that the president doesn't like, which is threatening constitutional rights that the Congress has. So if this was a consulting project to improve the computer systems of the government, were run by a superstar entrepreneur, I'd be way enthusiastic. I'd think it was a great idea. I would be cheering it on. But if it's giving access to people's Social Security records, to people's medical care payment records, to people who haven't gone through any vetting, if it's an enunciation of a new idea that the president can just cancel money that's been appropriated by Congress or his designates can, that I think is something that's very troubling. And that's why the past secretaries of the Treasury as a group have been so concerned about this.
You mentioned a project, a consulting project from a superstar entrepreneur. Elon Musk is an entrepreneur, world's richest man. I'll let others quantify the superstar tagline, but he responded to the op-ed on X saying, "Listen, Larry, quote, listen, Larry, we need to stop government spending like a drunken sailor on fraud and waste, or America is going to go bankrupt. That does mean a lot of grifters will lose their grift and complain loudly about it. Too bad. Deal with it." I saw you responded and offered to work with him, said you wanted to work with him. What do you say to Elon Musk and the way he's approaching this?
It's the point. It's the points I just made, Farrell. He says he's going to cut off payments that he doesn't like. Well, that's not what his power is. Of course, if it's fraudulent, the government shouldn't be doing it. But that doesn't mean that a set of people who haven't been vetted, who don't have security clearances, get to do whatever they want according to their discretion. That doesn't mean, as some email traffic suggested, that the government gets to decide that it doesn't like the payments that USAID is making. You don't get to just bring in new people to enforce against crime who are entirely untrained as policemen and who have no legal status because you've got concerns about the job the police are doing. And that's why this is a big overstep. If this is if the idea is to improve the systems, that's the right thing to do. And I would hope, and this was kind of the point of my response, that in addition to worrying about this, that there are trillions of dollars being lost because the IRS isn't able to enforce against people who don't pay all the taxes they owe, where the law is entirely clear. And that relates to computer problems. And unfortunately, the Trump administration is trying to slash the budget to get that right. And I would be delighted to work with Mr. Musk or anybody else to collect all the taxes we owe, because that's another part of confronting grift. Yeah, we absolutely ought to be confronting grift, but you don't get to just come in and do whatever you want as a political appointee who hasn't been removed from conflict of interest and all that. Look, Elon Musk competes with all kinds of other companies. Do we really think that he should have access to see, to monitor, and possibly even to stop payments to those other companies because he thinks that those are wasteful or fraudulent? I don't think that's the way our democracy works. So we're not saying that we shouldn't be drawing on that expertise, but to say that anybody who's worried about civil liberties should just get over it, to say that privacy is not a concern, to say that it's okay to decide that congressionally appropriated funds shouldn't be spent, that's not the way we've ever done things in America. It was tried a little bit during the Nixon administration, and the Supreme Court unanimously said that it was illegal. A court has already made an order here that it is problematic.
Former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, thanks so much for your time, sir. Appreciate it.